I feel like the episode of Futurama, Mace, where I believe it's one of the aliens on Futurama. I know that's really specific on a show about the aliens in the future, but where the alien was like, the Dave Matthews Band does not rock. I was like, the Denver Broncos do not rock. So either way, if you look back at Kansas City and writing my three keys piece, like, again, there's still a chance. I hate to say that. Nobody's going to believe us, Mace, but there's a window of opportunity for this team. I don't think they take it, but it's there.
There's a gleam, as I've quoted Marty Schottenheimer a couple of times this week, the former Chiefs head coach. There's a gleam. And look, we've seen it before. I think back to Super Bowl 50. I thought the Broncos had about a 2-10 shot of winning that game, or 1-5 if we want to narrow it down. And they had to take a very specific plan and follow it to win. And the game had to work out in a very specific way. And it pretty much did.
Right.
So is it impossible? No, it's not impossible. I would say, for example, one of the things that you start with is no turnovers. Well, you had no turnovers last week. So that's a good beginning. The key, I think a big key is going to be the Broncos staying exceptionally disciplined. Put it this way. I don't want to see them in 3 wide on 3rd and 1. I want to see heavy personnel. I want to see something that's very not basic, but power based.
Yes, and one thing that I wrote about in 3 keys, or might have been a game plan. I'm about halfway through my game plan right now. Is like, okay, just simplify things. Simple. Football is beautiful, Mace, and we love it for many reasons. It's the ultimate in complexity, but it's also the ultimate in simplicity. And sometimes it comes up to just line up and beat that other man off the ball. And if the Broncos can do that and make it simple, you don't need all the schemes. You don't need the Montreal Washington end arounds. You need to run the freaking ball and play with discipline and play to the strengths of your team. So it's there, but you have to simplify it. You have to get lucky and you have to stay disciplined.
You know what? The funny thing is, talk about simplification of things. And it came up with at the press conferences today when, of course, we hear from the coordinators. We hear from Nathaniel Hackett. But we also hear from all the coordinators, including offensive coordinator Justin Alton. And kind of a theme on the offense is that with so many young receivers, because it doesn't look like you're going to have Courtland Sutton. He did not practice again for a second consecutive day with a hamstring injury. You already don't have Tim Patrick. You got KJ Hamler on injured reserve. Jerry Jeudy, they're figuring out whether they're going to have him on a play count, pitch count, whatever you want to call it, colloquially for this game. But with so many young receivers, I mean, just look last week. You had times where you broke the huddle with Brandon Johnson, Montreal Washington, and Jalen Virgil. 3 rookies, none of whom were drafted before the 5th round. So because of that, when you have so many young players who are learning things, by nature, you have to simplify anyway, right? So basically the simplification, it's kind of set in stone based on what players you're able to put out there. Even at running back, you don't have a running back that you're using before 3rd down. Mike Boone's still the primary 3rd down guy, but Latavius Murray and Marlon Mack, these guys are still basically learning the system too.
Right. So if you're the Denver Broncos, I feel like when Peyton Manning went after Jeff Saturday, it wasn't a coach then, but that famous clip where he's like, "Run, pass, block. We're gonna run, block," and he's like, "We're run the ball." And I can't remember who broke him up, but he's like, "Calm down." So
we saw that many times with Peyton. I mean, there's that, and that was when he was mic'd up, and then the hot mic moment was in the playoffs that one year. Where Donald Brown missed his assignment and Peyton let an expletive fly that got picked up by the boom mics near the field. God bleep it, Donald. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, maybe I could have said it, but, you know, I try to be smart about these things.
Yeah. The FCC won't let us be, even if it is on YouTube, on our digital platform.
Oh, this isn't an FCC. Today. That's not an FCC concern.
It's not an FCC thing, but what's funny is if you're talking about, let's say, a car, and I'm going to use a different word, Mace, but just use your imagination. If you say like or a formation, right? They're going to shift the formation. YouTube has algorithms that will listen and think you said something else, and they'll demonetize you. Like,
For
so you have
saying,
to be careful what you say, because if it sounds like I used to say, shut your mouth,
yeah.
that will get us demonetized. So yes, we don't have the FCC, but we do have our YouTube overlords overlooking us. If this is marked like safe for kids, we can't say stuff like that.
So you don't want me to talk about paradigms changing then, because when it comes to paradigms changing, shift happens.
That's right. And shift is happening out at UC Health Training Center. So Jerry Jeudy's snap count, what would you say it is this week?
I'd say probably it'll end up being 30 to 40.
Okay.
That's just.
So let's say 2/3 of their
I have no
offensive
inside
snaps.
information. I'm honestly just guessing here, based on being limited in practice and based on them wanting to be careful and just this administration's tendency to err on the side of caution.
Yeah, and I think 2/3 of the snaps is very fair if you have the proper game plan using Jeudy, and Jeudy can be effective on those 2/3 of those snaps. So if it is 40 snaps, that's fine. Jerry Jeudy can be your leading receiver, can be a security blanket for Russell Wilson. And we've seen flashes, and it was my game plan I wrote about. It's like, I've seen flashes from Russell Wilson. Everyone hates to hear that because you just want to be like, Russ sucks and he can't play. Well, I don't think that. I think he can, and there were flashes in the Ravens game, early and late. It's not consistent, but there's enough there with Jerry Jeudy to give you some hope. Like, hey, maybe he can turn it around and stay healthy and be more consistent.
Hope's what you have basically for next year. I mean, that's what you're looking at with Russ is, can those flashes become more consistent? And I'll be honest with you, Cecil, in my mind, I'm not thinking about Russell Wilson getting back to being peak Russell Wilson.
No.
I'm thinking about Russell Wilson, if you had to rank the quarterbacks in overall efficiency, the 32 starting quarterbacks, I'm thinking about Russ being somewhere between 12 and 16. And that's functional. And that's where you start saying, okay, we may not get everything out of this contract that we hoped, but at least we can get some value. And paired with a very good defense, you start saying, okay, that's an equation that can allow us to have a pretty good amount of success. I mean, you're basically almost trying to become the Tennessee Titans a little bit. Although I would argue that Russell Wilson, even as much as he's struggling right now, can be better for you than Ryan Tannehill has been for the Titans as they've become a perennial playoff team.
Yep. So go out there, stay disciplined, and damn it, stay healthy. Clarence wants to know if the hamstring epidemic is caused by the preseason. A lot of theories out there, Mace, but we know we're in it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's one answer to this. The fact is, though, soft tissue injuries, that is where you start saying, okay, is it something with the conditioning? Is it something that the strength staff is dealing with? It's also a challenge here in Colorado because you've got to make sure that you're hydrated in a way that you don't necessarily have to be when you're operating at a lower elevation. So I think it's one of those things with the hamstrings where there are a lot of things, but I'm not sure that any one thing is the answer that's going to allow you to snap your fingers and fix it. What we do know is that the Broncos do have a much higher than average injury rate, not just this year, but the last 4 years as well. And you start kind of evaluating those, the Broncos have a much higher incidence of torn ACLs than other teams over the last few years. And what's the cause of that? Who's to say? But I wish we had an answer. I wish we had a firm answer. There are a lot of people out there on social media who think they have a firm answer, but I don't think they do just as much as any more than you or I do, Cease.
Right. Yeah. So we'll continue to monitor it and hope things get better. Chris also wants to know, why don't they pick up Trinity Benson? He's been out there a minute. He's been out there, at least a few weeks, memory serves.
Yeah. I mean, I think they wanted to get a look at Caden Davis a little bit more because they brought him back.
Okay.
I just wonder if maybe the boat has sailed on Trinity Benson here. with the Broncos.
See, now you're avoiding the YouTube overlords because you didn't say ship. The ship has sailed.
Oh, yeah. Although, is he still on the Lions or is he still like on their practice squad? Right?
I think they released him. I'm not sure. You know what a great site is? Unpaid endorsement. ProSportsTransactions.com. No paywall. But
He's on IR. He's on injured reserve for the Lions, so he can't get.
There we go.
So,
there we
there
go.
you go.
Yep. Had to be something. But the Broncos do have some younger players. And Mace, this is the evaluation portion of the season. We're into December. The season is lost. But when these young cats get out there, remember that, and I don't think any of these guys are Rod Smith, but you remember his first catch on Darrell Green for a touchdown. You know, I remember at end of the season, a CJ Anderson. Hell, even in Super Bowl 48, CJ had a good game. He had like 3 carries. But like he showed some heart. DT showed some heart. DT is getting the hell beat out of him in Super Bowl 48. You know, and what was it? Nate Irving that had a good game. And there's like 3 Broncos that were like, okay. But like at this point, and that was a Super Bowl, but at this point, over the next few weeks, the several weeks we have left, 5 games, we can say who is building towards the future. And that's what I'm very curious about for all of these young players, no matter if it's Brandon Johnson, Jalen Virgil, whoever gets out there, make some plays and you're going to get some attention.
Right. And the thing is, this is the best audition some of these guys are going to have because you get into the offseason and preseason next year. And you know what happens then? You've got a new crop of new players coming in, new crop of rookies, right? So for those receivers, for Jalen Virgil, for Brandon Johnson, for Montrell Washington, yeah, this might be the best shot you have to show that you can play in this league. And then you kind of look at other areas on the roster, for example, and we're seeing some of them. I'd like to see a few more young players, even though it probably runs counterintuitive to trying to get wins in some spots, but you have to be evaluating. I think edge rusher is really interesting right now because the Broncos seem to have a trio that works in Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper, who was limited today with an ankle injury in practice, and Jacob Martin. And all 3 of them are under contract for next year. And Cooper and Browning have, they're second-year guys. They've got 2 more years left on their deals. So you look at them and say, all right, where does Nick Bonito fit in? I mean, Nick Bonito played 1 snap on Sunday. Maybe you find ways to rotate Bonito in, but at the same time, I mean, are you kind of setting up for a future where one of those players is going to be an odd person out? I think maybe you give PJ, maybe you give PJ Locke a little more run at safety, give him a possession or 2, and let Kareem Jackson rest. They've already got Kareem Jackson on the vet old day plan, by the way, because he isn't practicing on Wednesdays right now. So yeah, go to the offensive line. I mean, at what point do you give Luke Wattenberg some snaps? Perhaps.
Sure.
Yeah. Why not?
Make it happen. See what you got. Why didn't Bonito get more work? I know Hackett answered it, but I'm not going to rely on Hackett's answer.
I think it's what they do, what versus what they say. I think right now you've just got they talk. I think Evero talked a little bit about against the run, and I think just the other guys are better at setting the edge right now. That's all.
They did a better job. Like again, the Baltimore game, and everyone could lose their mind and say it was terrible, and how do you hold them to 10 and you lose, and the defense collapses at the end or whatever stuff that we ranted on Monday. But when you go back and you watch that game, like better at setting the edge for Cooper, for Browning. They weren't perfect, okay? There were times when Browning and Cooper both gave it up, but setting the edge, turning guys back inside, hustle plays. There were some hustle plays from Browning where he's like chasing stuff down from the backside. You like seeing those sorts of things. So again, progress, not a win, not what people want, Mace, but let's not lose our mind and go, okay, there was some signs of positivity in terms of getting better at run defense, which you have to be sound. Without Bradley Chubb, there were weeks when you were very unsound. And against the Chiefs, I think Kelsey's the key, but I think Pacheco could, run angry like he always does.
Well, you'll get K'Wan Williams back for this game, which will certainly help in support on the edge coming from the slot. But one thing that I liked that they did last week, Draymond Jones did yeoman's work being asked to go play on the edge.
Yep.
But once you got Baron Browning back up to speed, that's something that should have been out of the equation. And so I feel like they used their edges right against Baltimore and allowed Draymond Jones to go back inside where he has a distinct advantage against the interior lineman that he's going to be facing. I thought they did the Broncos, the defense's disservice, and Draymond a disservice by continuing to have him seeing some reps on the edge against Carolina, when by that point, Jacob Martin had been in for a couple of weeks. He'd learned the scheme. He knew what he was doing. You had Jonathan Cooper. You had Baron Browning all the way back. So I feel like they did what they should have done a week too late. But you see the signs. I'll tell you one thing I am a little concerned about is DJ Jones not practicing today.
Yeah.
And I thought he was actually the biggest beneficiary of Draymond going back to his natural role, working on the inside,
right?
Because that freed him up, and he was much more active and disruptive and breaching into the backfield more consistently against Baltimore when Draymond was on the inside than he had been in those 3 previous games when Draymond was seeing a lot of work on the edge.
Yeah, we'll see what the Broncos do this week, but it is Isaiah Pacheco. It is that cast of thousands, it seems like, with everybody the Chiefs have. Now with less Sky Moore. Like, Sky Moore, like, popped a little bit, and then they went back to the bench. So we'll see. But it's Kelsey and Pacheco to me. Those are the 2 players to focus on, and it might be Pacheco when they get up. When they get a lead, the Chiefs might not necessarily call off the dogs, Mace. I don't know if they can do that if Mahomes is on the field, because he wants to score on every throw. But, like, they might run it a little bit more to prove they can. They have no room for error. They're not the number 1 seed in the AFC anymore. So you're getting Kansas City kind of at a bad time, because losing that Cincinnati game lost them the number 1 seed. And if you look at Buffalo's schedule, they're probably not going to lose the rest of the year. Well, KC, you better keep up.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is beyond Kelsey, this is like the cast of dozens, right?
Yes.
Kelsey's got 12 touchdown catches. Nobody else has more than 4 touchdown receptions from Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, I got to ask you this, because in my mind, I'm counting the Pacheco mentions from you, and it's 2 so far in the show.
I think it might be 3. But anyway,
will there be a part of you that feels vindicated from a scouting analysis perspective if Pacheco has a big game on Sunday?
Well, his 4.7 yards per carry is already number 5 in the league for running backs, for regular starting running backs. So it's like, and he's taken the league. Not to say I feel vindicated, because he started 6 games. So he's 6 games into his career. Young man still got plenty of time left. And I don't want to do that, Mace, because you know how the football gods are. They'll strike me down with great vengeance and furious anger.
Nice.
So, like, and the thing is like, I learn more from my misses. So when Tariq Woolen hits, I go, yep, 4.2, and he's 6'4". When Isaiah Pacheco hits, I go, yep, he runs a 4.2 and he runs angry. Like, when I miss on a player as an evaluator, I go, I'm feverish. Like, why did I miss? What happened? What did I not see? What's going on? What did I ignore? What do I need to learn? When I hit, I just go, And I don't like pat myself on the back on that kind of stuff, because you know how this game is, and I know that when Montrell Washington makes a play, I'm going to hear it from all sorts of people, but and it's like, hey, 1 play in 13 weeks, like, awesome. But, like, to me, it's just I care about the Broncos, man. Let's go find those talented players. And Pacheco, I don't know why they didn't pick him. If I could have a private moment with George Payton, and I almost asked him this in training camp, but I didn't want to be a Dick Cheney, so I got to clean that up.
Nice.
But I want to just ask him, like, why didn't you take Pacheco? Like, come on, man. Why didn't you? They brought him in, top 30 visit. Those are valuable. So, the kid can play, and now he's a weapon for your biggest division rival.
And oh, by the way, last 4 games, he started 6 in a row. Last 4 games, yards from scrimmage, 82, 107, 86, and 82. And then last week, they also used him on kickoff returns, which they've done throughout the year. It
reminded me of Amon Green that way. Remember when Amon Green played for the Seahawks? He was like a kick returner.
Yeah. He averaged 23.2 yards a kickoff return last week. By the way, That's a number that would look nice if the Broncos could get there. The Broncos, by the way, are dead last in kickoff return average, on pace to be that for a second consecutive year. Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't say I made the mistake of it. I brought up the fact that Baltimore had kicked to the Broncos 3 times, one a little pooch kick, and then a couple that were short of the goal line last Sunday in Baltimore. Because
you did that to Stooks?
Yeah, because a couple of weeks ago. See, I listened to what's being said. A couple of weeks ago, he talked about being challenged by the Raiders when they kicked short. And so I said, look, I mean, you're still getting challenged here, like you said. And he had a very typical Dwayne Stooks response.
Did you get the evil eye? No.
He said I was trying to set him up, but that he would answer anyway.
You're just trying to talk ball, man.
No, but he gives good answers, and he gets up there like you can kind of more so than other coaches with Stooks up there. You get a taste of what he's like when he's up in front of the entire meeting room, right? Mm-hmm. You get that sense, and you get the sense of frustration from him. I mean,
for sure,
yeah. The exact quote here, he said, "I'm irritated by getting challenged every weekend. It's football, right? And I'm a prideful person as well as I'm a highly competitive person. I compete in everything. If it's my kids, I'm going to compete versus them." I'm thinking, whoa, this is the guy who's not going to let his kids win.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, he's an evangelist for special teams, and I mean, I think he's just kind of at the begging and pleading point with his guys, but I can't blame him. I mean,
whose call is it to trot out Montreal Washington every week?
Well,
why aren't they trying something different?
They tried something different, and
then
fumbled.
Virgil fumbled. I know. I hate it.
Right.
I love Jalen Virgil, man.
And
so is that it?
And no, D-Mac, if you're watching this, they're not going to trot out Pat Surtain.
No, that's not going to happen.
That is not going to happen. Like, hey, we all love D-Mac, but he's got his flights of fancy that are just like incompatible with reality. No, they're not going to cut Russell Wilson in the offseason. Even though just to kind of, to play out the exercise, I did yesterday go on air and kind of go through the contractual moves they could make that would actually allow them to do it and create and be in cap compliance. But no, they're not cutting Russell Wilson. The best way out of this is try to get Russell Wilson right, or at least to a mid-tier level.
Yes.
And they're not going to tank for Caleb Williams. They're just not. And here's another reason why they're not going to tear it down. It's this. If you did the full tear down in theory, you know what happens when you do that? The GM who does that generally doesn't survive it. Right? You tear it down, and then you get blamed that it hasn't been built back up fast enough, so they end up sacking you at some point. And that's why it's these things, there are certain things that just aren't compatible with reality. So
John Robinson got fired, and the Titans are first in their division.
Yeah.
And not like Robinson was perfect. He made some mistakes, but like, okay. Let's deal in reality. What's the reality of dealing with Travis Kelce? That's the one thing when I watch the film and I look at what Cincinnati did. I'm like, Cincinnati, they beat KC 3 times in a row. The AFC Championship, Kelce did get off. I think he got like 100 yards or whatever. But the other 2 times at the end of the season last year, and then just this last week this year, Kelce had 40 yards, 50 yards, whatever. So he didn't really get off. The guy's got 400-yard games so far this season and 3 or 4 80, 90-yard games. But
5 for 25 last year. 5 for 25 last year. 4 for 56 on Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's where it's about rushing no more than 4, dropping everybody else and bracketing him. I mean that's the way.
You put Simmons with whoever else is on him, like a Jewel Simmons combination, something like that.
Yeah, and I know the temptation is to say, "Oh, put PS2 on him." PS2 is going to be dealing with Jamar Chase, and or not Jamar Chase. He's going to be dealing with them because you got me thinking about the Bengals. He's going to be dealing with guys on the outside, and you know what? It's a cast of dozens, but Mahomes is still involving those guys. He's getting a good season out of Juju Smith-Schuster. He's getting good season out of MVS. So
MVS has like the most 20-yard receptions in the league.
Right. So it's not as simple as saying, let's just go have Surtain on Kelsey. I think this is something where you do have to say, all right, we're not going to blitz. And that could be a concern because you've struggled to get home against opposing quarterbacks without blitzing. And it's even more of a concern if you don't have DJ Jones for this game. But you're going to have to gamble on Mahomes getting a little bit impatient, and at times he will do that when you only rush 3 or 4 and you flood the back end and force him to kind of to methodically try to figure things out and jam it into some windows that aren't there. That's the way the Broncos are going to maybe be able to pull off this upset.
And there is an X factor with Kansas City. You'll remember him from a couple of different spots, but Jerick McKinnon. This team struggles against tight ends in coverage, and they struggle against pass-catching running backs. And Pacheco's going to do his thing, run angry, but they don't really use him as a receiver because they have Jet McKinnon. And McKinnon had, 10 touches last week? So, another 10 touches could be very significant against Denver. So you have not only this cast of dozens receivers, like who's it going to be? I don't know. From a fantasy perspective, it's a nightmare predicting Kansas City's offense because it's like one of these receivers is going to do something. Kelsey's going to own the day, and then Pacheco's going to be okay. But like Jerick McKinnon, I think Jerick McKinnon could be a problem for Denver.
10 touches, 60 yards, averaged north of 6.3 yards per carry on his 8 carries. But some weeks it's on the ground, some weeks it's in the passing game. They find a way to get him opportunities, and he can be problematic from time to time. Not dynamic, but he can cause you he can cause you some problems. I mean, one of the things also, as we talk about what the Bengals did last week, let's not forget, for all the Bengals did right, if Mahomes doesn't fumble that ball at the goal line, Kansas City wins. Okay?
Yes.
And one thing that I think we can objectively say is that Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback because of what happened in the AFC Championship game last year.
Yes.
He has adjusted. He has gotten more patient when he sees 8 guys in the secondary. He has been more willing to take what's there, even if it's just a quick scramble to keep things on schedule. So while you found ways to contain Mahomes and cause him some problems, he has also adapted and figured things out too. And that, I think, for the Broncos long term is kind of the scary thing, because every time there's been a moment where it looked like, oh, they've got him figured out. A few games later, he's adapted. It's part of what makes him such a great quarterback.
Yes.
It's that he's continuing to evolve, and as he does that, and you realize, this is not simply it's not simply going to get it done. Then you end up compromised, and he can do what he does best. So that's that's kind of where we are, and we're not talking about shutting down Mahomes. No. We're talking about containing him a bit. That's what we're talking about here.
Well, and Mace, another thing we're talking about, we're at the end of the show, so we'll have to keep it somewhat brief, but just what you said and how he's learned after the AFC Championship game, it was organic. Russ is trying to make this decision, like, I'm going to play 10 years and I want to be a pocket passer. No. It just happens organically. When John Elway was less of a scrambler, like, that was organic. And when he had to scramble, that was the helicopter play in 32, right? Like, Mahomes has done this organically. The crazy thing is, if you let him, he'll throw 500 yards. He'll kill you with his arm. But if he's patient and he has to do that little scramble, stick the ball out at the sideline, you know what I mean? First down, move those chains. Like, Mahomes learned how to putt, and it's kind of scary.
By the way, just to kind of go over the Chiefs, the last 6 games, by the way, only once have they been held below 430 yards in the last 6 games. That was last week against the Bengals, to their credit. But in 5 of those 6 games, the Chiefs have run for at least 110 yards. They are taking what's given to them. Mahomes is taking what is given to them. Look, that's why, especially with Von Miller out of the picture in Buffalo, hate to say it's the Broncos country. That's your Super Bowl favorite.
You heard it from Andrew Mason. You follow him on Twitter at Mace Denver. Mace, I'll be off tomorrow because I'm going to do the drive. I think it's with D-Mac. I think Derek's off, so I'm filling in for Derek. So
I'll see you over there in the 5 o'clock hour then, or actually no, the 3 o'clock hour. Yeah, you're used to me coming in to join you after I go on air.
Right
now, you're gonna get the first version before I hop on this show with James Marilat. So,
there you go.
The show will take on a very different tone.
Yes, as long as we get the movie references in, that's fine.
Oh yeah, but. Yeah, the show will take on a different tone. However, I will say that James is somebody who does believe Russell Wilson's going to put it together next year and get it back. So I think we'll explore some of that tomorrow on Orange and Blue Today.
And hey, whatever James believes and he puts out there, he can back it up. Yeah, you may not agree with it, you may hate him for it, but like he backs it up. So it always makes a fun conversation. That is tomorrow on Orange and Blue Today. I'm Cecil Lammey. He is Andrew Mason. Everyone, until the next time, be safe, be kind, know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned. And as always, I ask that you stay frosty.